Yeah, and I paused our recording and started back editing right here. So I know I was talking about meditation and the changes in the brain that can occur from meditation, and talking about my own training in meditation and EMDR and being in resonance. And you can see from your text, there's many studies talking about the changes in the brain from meditation. This gamma synchrony that is said to reflect consciousness and insight is something we can see in neurofeedback. The synchrony is the both hemispheres in being synchronous and sync together with their hertz of gamma hertz. You see how difficult it can be with the brain research with someone who's just beginning to do meditation. You often, when we do this in class, we're meditating sometimes when I do those activities with you, and some of you may not be able to do it. You get frustrated, and that's because you're trying to pay attention and words are doing it wrong, and you're in your head, and so those different parts of your brain are accessed. And then over time, as you start to get more comfortable with it, and you just let it go and just notice what's coming into your mind and not judging it, the more you're able to get into that meditative state. If any of you have ever gotten into that state, it can be a really powerful experience where you're, getting insight and you're seeing colors or having some kind of experience that's really helpful. And I find that anyone can do this. And as clinicians, teaching people to do this or making a part of your session or ending your session this way is a really nice thing to do, because then they're doing it every week, once a week. So probably not going to do homework, to be honest. Only your people-pleasing clients will do your homework, and then you want to know more about that, right? Because they're doing it just to get your approval or whatever. So there's apps, and we talk about all of this when we talked about self-care, but at least once a week, you could do 5 minutes of some type of meditation. There's a million online. There's the Egg of Light, and the ones I'm teaching you in class. So the Stream of Light, comfortable, relaxing place, just breathing. And then there's talk therapy. And all of these, remember, are increasing neuroplasticity and neurogenesis. And there was an older study that we reference a lot that looked at the brain and saw that 80% of clients got better when they used a combination of an antidepressant and talk therapy. So we know actually talking to a clinician does change the brain. Your texts reference neuroplastic strategies like mental imagery, which is meditation, hypnosis, neurolinguistics programming. I don't know much about that. EMDR and brain spotting similar to EMDR, paired with externally observed and internally experienced reflective responses is what your text says. So having a client access a memory and talk through it, or talk through what's going on, and then you offering alternatives like in CBT or brief solution focus therapy. And we'll learn more about that at the end of this semester in theories, and then again next semester, those theories. But you're offering alternative ways to explain or look at situations that perhaps they've not thought of. And the more that they meditate, aka think about this alternative strategy or explanation, the more that neuronal connection strengthens. And then the other one prunes off, and they go, oh, okay, well, I should be proud of myself. I'm a vice president and I have children and I'm a single mom. And yeah, of course I'm stressed because I'm doing a remodel on my house right now. It's normal for me to be stressed. I am handling this well. An alternative explanation. So just talk therapy will change a brain. Okay. So what are the implications for us as mental health counselors? I really love this chapter. Again, I think it's a huge piece of what we were missing in the program. Didn't have a lot of time to talk about this in other classes. It didn't fit. And I love that this is something we're talking about. When I'm pausing, I'm drinking coffee. Sorry. So here are your implications. neuroplasticity can work for and against a client. And in class, I'll ask you, what does that mean? How could it work for and against a client? You should know that by now from everything I've said. The brain is capable of change, but it's not easy. It's not easy. You've got to commit. I tell my clients when they come in for EMDR, we are going to have a love-hate relationship. There are times you're going to sit in my parking lot and not want to come in, but you know you need to. And what I mean by that is this very statement. It is hard to do therapy. It is not easy. You're asking your client to come in and be vulnerable and share information that perhaps they've never told another human being. And believe me, there's a good amount of that. I had someone, a professor at one point, tell me they didn't believe that. And I'm still mad about that because there are things people hold that they can't share with anyone. And they share it with you, or they know they're going to share it with you, and they're building, or they're going to have to go back and kind of relive it or re-experience it. Or they're holding on to it for 6 months because they're scared to tell you because they don't know how you'll react because of all of their prior experiences with the way people have reacted to them. And they haven't worked through that yet. And clients also don't trust you right away. And they'll say, oh, I trust you. I'm like, why? You don't know me. Like, why? I tell them right away, like, don't trust me yet. I need to earn that. I need to work to earn your trust. You need to make sure, you don't know me. I could be terrible. You've only seen me 2 times. Like, what if I, become a horrible clinician on session 4? So I say, easy. I need to earn that as a therapist. And so it is hard. They're coming in and having to be so vulnerable and maybe revisit emotions they have kept in a box for their entire life. And once we get through it, their life changes for the better. So it is this really interesting process because I have to really encourage them to come on in, and because we'll get them through it. Certain conditions make neuroplastic changes more likely, which we just talked about that, for the good or the bad. But we know that these things like drug use, traumatic brain injury, and let me tell you, I'm going to roll this morning on traumatic brain injuries are, I'm going to do a presentation on this. They are responsible for half or 75% of the mental health issues that we're seeing today, because we are just beginning to learn how small brain injuries that you don't even think you have are causing problems. So when we're doing neurofeedback, and I've just learned this in the past year and a half, we're seeing TBIs. I have a TBI, a traumatic brain injury. I didn't know I had a traumatic brain injury. I mean, if you had asked me that, I would say no. I never went to the hospital or never remember being on concussion protocol. And what we are seeing is the brain is basically malleable. It's kind of, it's not jello, but it's that squishy. I can't think of a good word for this. I don't know why I can't, but it's in there. There's space between the skull and the brain. And so if we hit anything, or a ball hits us in the head, or our kid pops us in the nose with the back of their skull, or we fall off a jungle gym or a bed when we're little, we have a TBI. And you might not have had enough to have a concussion, but you have it. We can see it in your brain. And 75% of the EEGs that we do, we see them. And we can work on that and heal it through neurofeedback, because we can train your brain to kind of go in that area and address those excess delta waves that are in that area. But also any kind of stress causes your brain to change. We've been that's what's wrong with everybody right now, if you're wondering. And I've talked about that a lot, but we've all been real stressed. Everybody, the whole world has been super stressed. We were stressed before 2020, so we weren't doing super great. But we are for sure stressed after COVID and with COVID, after COVID, whatever. In COVID, the world, the war, the climate, we were just inundated. Hurricanes, weather, threat of nuclear war. I mean, people don't talk about it, but it is impacting our nervous systems and being under constant threat. And so that's why you're seeing this influx of substance abuse and suicidality and mental health. That's why. Learning is an associative process. Learning helps the brain. So when we learn new behaviors and new coping mechanisms, it strengthens. And this is why I am a stickler for you better not call me after hours, because I want you to use your coping mechanisms. My biggest thorn in my side are therapists that allow themselves to be contacted after hours. Because if your client, especially a complex trauma or borderline client, knows they can get you and get that need met by getting the attention from you at any point in any day, they're never going to use what you're teaching them. When they learn ways to cope, and one of the big things I do big cheers for is if they call the crisis hotline, because that's a tool. If my like self-interest behavior clients, they end up, my cutting clients and stuff, if they call 988 or whatever, I don't make a big party for the cut. I don't make a big deal about it either. And I'll talk more about that throughout the next 2 years, how to explain what that process is like, because I don't want them to learn that, oh, if you cut yourself, I'm going to go, oh my gosh, are you okay? Where did you cut yourself? Oh, let me see. No. I don't give them any energy. I'm like, okay, you did that. That worked for you. How does that help? Okay. Is there something else you could do instead? Were you trying to kill yourself? What was, and they're like, no, I just, did it for the pain and it releases pain. I'm like, what are there other things we could do? That's how I handle that. Now, if they said, Dr. Veal, I was so upset and I called 988 and I talked it through with them and the crisis hotline, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm so excited. You called the crisis line. How was it? How did it feel when you called the crisis line? I want them to be empowered that they took ownership of their own health and wellness, and they made that call is huge. So if they do that, they may never make a call again, because that in and of itself is a learning process. Like, oh, okay, I took care of myself and I was important enough to take care of myself. And Dr. Veal thinks it's so good that I did this. And they're learning something about taking care and protecting themselves. So I could probably talk for 3 hours about that. Let's see. Early change is fragile and fleeting if it's not followed up with massive practice. Okay. When I do EMDR, this is why it works, okay? Because it's talking about it in it's in your book all over the place, because the research is just coming out in droves about the efficacy of it. But a negative experience is quickly learned and easily retriggered within a few seconds. But a positive state requires reflection, time, reverence, and time to soak in the enjoyable experience, like 10 to 20 seconds. And that is because, think about it, when you're walking along and you see a snake, you better jump back, right? But that's not your prefrontal cortex that's doing that. It is your hippocampus, like amygdala. It's down there in the limbic going, whoo! It doesn't have time to think. There's no thought in that part of your brain. It's feeling. And it's like, whoo, fight or flight. I'm about to die. Jump back. Jump. So it's got to be quick. A negative association has to save your life. A positive association is something that you like, but might not save your life, right? And so we like cotton candy, but it's not going to save your life. But if I don't jump back from a snake and it's poisonous and I'm in the middle of the woods, I could die. So this kind of makes sense if you think about it like that. So we have to work a little harder to reverse that negative association in the brain and consolidate positive information and keep it going. So in EMDR, we're process, all the way negative, to positive. Then we install a positive belief. Then we check your body, because we store all our feelings from our necks down. Y'all are probably tired of hearing me talk. All right, mental rehearsal. This is CBT, all right? So basically, we know, and CBT portion of EMDR is what I just said. We take a negative cognition, which is a belief, like I am not good enough, linked with a memory. We go into the memory network. We have a series of questions that we ask a client in order to activate that memory network, get them all upset, which is what I want. Let them feel it, mind, body, spirit. let them experience that. And I have a lot to keep them protected during that too, so they don't get out of their windows of stress tolerance. Then we go. And then until they come out on the other side. And now through that, I'm doing therapy. I'm going, how old were you? Okay, you're 6. Do you know how little 6 is? When you think about yourself as 6, what does that look like? And then, do you know a 6-year-old? Like, would you think this is a 6-year-old's fault? Like, would you tell your cousin that it's their fault that this happened? So I do all sorts of CBT-like technique and different techniques. It could be brief solution focus, narrative. I use all sorts of things, sensory motor, that I do while the client is processing. And at some point, there's insight that's gained. And we have extinguished the trigger in the brain. And then we are rehearsing the positive. Wait a minute, I was only 6. They were an adult. They should have known better. Yes, absolutely. Go with that. And look, when I'm doing EMDR, I'm bringing both hemispheres on. So don't get confused. I mean, any bilateral stimulation of the brain is going to encode. So we're bringing on left, right. Okay, so if you know the brain, and we should probably have a whole class on this, but we're getting the prefrontal on, because that's the thinking part. The thinking part needs to talk to the limbic and say, chill, that's over. You're not 6 anymore. You're an adult. You are a grown ass adult. You can stand up for yourself now. Do you know you can do that? I know I said a bad word, but that's okay. I cuss in counseling all the time, and hopefully you will too. Because you just can't talk about some things without a cuss word, honestly. My colleagues might not agree, but I do intense trauma work, so I can't be like, gosh, that was really terrible. I mean, I kind of have to have an expletive in there. And even I encourage my clients to kind of just get it out. They may not cuss in their daily life, but I just encourage them to we are pushing so much down into our brains and bodies. And there's like the society, and everyone's told us what to do and we can't do, and especially women and marginalized populations. I'm like, get it out. Like, you want to say F it or whatever. Say it in here, because we can do that. And it helps your brain, right? Because it's empowering to be able to say that and not have some repercussions. Let your therapist be like, yes, get it out. Okay. Y'all may disagree with me, and that's fine. I don't care. Talk therapy is brain therapy. It does change your brain. And so even talking to your clients and having that rapport is going to change their brain. Just so you see, this EMDR neuroplasticity study. So I have these series of brain images here, and I have one on your slide, but you can see the left brain pre-EMDR and the right brain post-EMDR. And I'm actually, I've piloted a few, I've offered a few free neurofeedback sessions for people, because what I'm trying to find is my own pre-post study with QEEG. And what I want to do is a pre QEEG, and then a full EMDR treatment, and then a post EEG, QEEG, to look at the brain. And you see here, this is a functional MRI, so this is a much nicer image. Of course, I'm just looking at the electrical impulses in the brain, but if you see here, look at that left brain pre-EMDR. That's the areas that aren't functioning in the way they should be. And I will tell you what that means and what I think it means. There's areas of overactivity and underactivity in the brain. And then you see look at this right one. Look at that post-brain. Isn't that cool? And then I have these two. They're on your slides, but they're 2 different angles. And you see that unhealthy activity in the brain. And again, they don't say in here what that is, but knowing what I know from all the neurofeedback training, which is like basically getting a medical degree, I feel like, that is the areas of overactivity and underactivity in the brain, depending on the person. And that's both not working an optimum level. And then look here, we just have a few spots after. I mean, look at that. Isn't that amazing? I love it. Love it, love it, love it. And there's lots of data here. I'm not trying to make y'all many EMDR therapists. I know that's terrible. I try to be so unbiased, but that's my trauma. That's my Body Keeps the Score PowerPoint. I need to find our other PowerPoint. There it is. This one. Okay. Ooh, there. So I put one on your side just because it was neat. I'm still recording. Yes, I am. Okay. All right. So we did that. Yes. Okay. And then the neuroscience of wellness. And I did the poverty simulation last week or this week, because this is, my schedule has been crazy, which is why I have not posted these yet. And I'm so sorry. I have a brand new text and new PowerPoints I'm creating from scratch and new lectures I'm creating from scratch. And it would have been easier to just come teach class than do all of this, but I could have done that much more quickly, but it is what it is. But I was talking with our student, Holly. Hey, Holly. And, these things, and I've mentioned this earlier, these things are tough for marginalized populations and specifically people who are in poverty. I mean, these are kind of higher order things that we do when we have our shelter taken care of. If you think about hierarchy needs, our food, our water, our lights, our refrigerator, our car, like when you have all of that stuff taken care of, yeah, we can focus on these things. But man, I think it's difficult to do this. So we know that I want you to read this and understand the importance of these, though. I mean, sleep. Cannot tell you how many clients, once we've figured out their sleep, they're better. Sleep is paramount. I mean, it's just the most important thing for you with your mental health. We even know that there is a process with sleep that we talked about earlier, where those glial cells go through the spinal fluid and flush out those toxins, including those beta amyloid proteins that are responsible for Alzheimer's. So we also know, and my theory is during brain training, during REM is EMDR while asleep. So EMDR is REM. That's what we're doing, rapid eye movement. While awake, attending to memories. If we look at dream sleep, what's happening and what the theory is the consolidation and pruning of material of the day, right? And that's why our dreams are so out there. But that could include higher state consciousness stuff. I mean, so it's not like dreams should not be addressed. Look at nightmares. You're reliving a trauma over and over and over. Your brain is looping. And it's in the excitatory firing pattern, and it's encoded in the memory network, and it's not consolidating. It is not going in a category. It is like, danger, danger, we are going to die. And I could talk about that probably ad nauseum, but so we got to address that stuff, right? I mean, we can't, if someone's having nightmares, then we have to deal with the nightmare, and we have to find ways to get them to sleep, because if we don't, then they're going to be depressed, anxious, and could be diagnosed with a whole host of other things. So your text even talks about melatonin. I refer people to take that all the time. 10-minute naps and neurofeedback training for insomnia is even in your text. We treat so many people for it effectively. We treat O1, O2, SMRCZ. That's like the sites in the brain. And it's pretty amazing. So melatonin for kids, melatonin for adults. Now, you don't want to overuse melatonin because it is a hormone and it can affect puberty and things like that. So, but if you sleep, getting sleep is more important. So if you can, that's not habit forming. It's natural to some degree. I mean, so if you have a client, you can refer them for that, or have them check with their doctor if they're a pediatrician, right? So you always want to say that to cover yourself. That sounds terrible, I know, but you do need to do that. The diet, I mean, we know the gut-brain connection. We've talked about this. Our gut is a second brain. We found this out about 10 years ago, and it makes the most sense. We know that our food is contaminated, modified genetically. A lot of us are not getting anything fresh. When we do even get fresh or organic, it may not be. We know the contaminants in many of meats and in fish. So, definitely affects us. We know that there are supplements that help us to be healthier. And I often refer clients to take supplements too. So you may be confused about, wow, I didn't know we did all this, but we do. Fish oil, turmeric, vitamin D, and zinc, especially with COVID. I would talk to them about that, making sure they're taking supplements and doing healthy things. Exercise is so hard to get people to do, but we know that it changes the brain, and we know that it's going to reduce depression. So even walking, or sometimes clients I know is just not even, it's just so difficult for them. I will just say, I just want you to walk outside and walk around your yard or apartment complex for 5 minutes, or I just want you to get outside in nature and get the sun on your face for 10 minutes for vitamin D. So emotional balance, that's what we go for in EMDR. You're out of that, and you can see what's happening in the brain when you're under a constant state of threat. Your fight or flight engages, and then your hormones are released, and they continue to release, and your body thinks you're still under a threat, even when you're not. And what happens in social threats is, it used to be like a tiger's chasing us, and so we're going to run away, and we're going to hide in a cave, and the tiger's going to go away, and we're going to return to homeostasis. Now there's tigers everywhere. Tigers are everywhere. Everything's a tiger, because the way your brain encoded that information is a threat. And it's the snake that we talked about earlier, but it's really not a snake, it's a stick. But you still think it's a snake on the ground, and everything's a snake, which means there was somebody mean to you in 2nd grade. You encoded that to mean you're a terrible person. Then your teacher in 4th grade looked at you wrong, and that also means you're a bad person. And then at the end, you didn't know your part in the school play, so you're a terrible, awful, horrible human. You're the worst. You're the worst in the world. And then your mom yells at you and says something to you, and you're a terrible, horrible human. And it continues. And then everyone that reminds you of each one of those events or anything or any time of day, because your brain has the thalamus, which is a timekeeper that's exact and crazy, scary how exact it is. And I'll tell stories about that in a minute. But it remembers, because it's supposed to keep you safe, and it has to jump back and protect you from that snake. So, it's 5 o'clock on a Tuesday on October the whatever day it is today. Or it's 10 o'clock in the morning, and that was a terrible day. And your thalamus remembers that, because its job is to protect you. Now, it's not talking to the left brain to say, hello, that was 5 years ago. You're fine. Nobody's going to come rob you today. And your conscious brain won't even remember that that day is occurring. You won't have a clue why you're so upset and stressed and panicked for the day. But your limbic's trying to protect you. So now it's really complicated, and it's complex, because your right brain's trying to protect you, and your left brain doesn't know that's doing that. So your left brain has to be able to talk to your right brain, get your right brain to be like, hey, it's cool. That's not happening anymore. You're fine. So I just explained that, I think. So the goal is to get left brain to talk to right brain in whatever way you do that. And that also happens in CBT if you think about it, and not just EMDR, because what are we doing in CBT? We're using logic. So all of the theories, if you think about it, start to activate the whole brain and start to make sense of it. And then over time, your window of stress tolerance is going to increase, which means you can handle more, and your triggers are not going to trigger you anymore. So when you wake up on today at 10 o'clock in the morning, your brain's not going to go, hello, fight or flight, you're in trouble, because we've healed it. And that neuronal connection has either ceased to exist or has strengthened in a positive connection. We also know social connection and meaning and purpose in life. What theorist is that? And we know that as existentialism, and I did not spell purpose right. Look, I have a typo. But I would say too, in social connection, we remember from, Johann Hari, Chasing the Scream, we were made for connection. We were made to be in connection. Our brain has mirror neurons and other types of neuronal connections that respond to social interaction and connection. We know that your death rate increases and your health issues increase if you're lonely. So Also in this chapter, it talks about biofeedback. This is something I would encourage everyone to learn and get. And this is a heart rate variability and skin temperature and ways that clients in your Apple Watches. Well, I don't like an Apple Watch at all, but the good thing about an Apple Watch is that it will tell you when to breathe. So that's a positive thing. I think I skipped RAM. That was emotional balance, social connection, and meaning and purpose in life. Well, we already know that. We need that, right? All right, I'm going to quit talking. This has been long, so I think I'm done talking. Am I done talking? Oh, yeah. So building your wellness plans, that's something that your assignment is coming up. And so use your text. There's page 327 in chapter 12 gives you tips here. And there's even a positive asset search that you can find. And I think that is in the index here. There's web resources. So check those out. There's TED Talks and articles. So I would encourage you to look at that and then think about your own wellness plan and start working on that. And also think about, how do we build wellness with marginalized populations? All right. I'm looking forward to seeing y'all in a week and a half. Signing out.